say this. Yaxel's coming. Yaxel is coming. Yaxel Lendeborg officially committed to play for Dusty May at the University of Michigan. That's some of the big news that dropped in the early part of last week. In fact, I think it was actually on Monday after last week's show had been uploaded. So we are going to talk about that. I was trying to think of something to come up with other than Tigers related to kick off this program, or at least give this episode a title, though most of our discussion will be Tiger-based. Welcome into I'll Say This. I am Chris Castellani. Let's get these show notes out of the way. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. CastellaniContent.com, getting updated every single day with Tiger post games, I'll Say This episodes, Chris and Company episodes on Twitter at Castellani2014. You can follow me on TikTok. Let's get, we're trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. We are on pace to do so right now, which is very, very exciting. And lastly, and this will be the last week in which I can promote this. I'm sure you guys are getting tired of it. This Friday, starting at 5 o'clock, lasting all the way through the Tiger game against the Cubs, I will be at the Lone Goat with Austin for a Detroit Tigers fan watch party, meet and greet, get together, whatever you want to call it. Really, really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be an awesome series and really an awesome event. Went down and scouted the place out a few weeks back, met Donald, their owner, in person. Really, I'm very rarely this excited for something, which maybe means I'm building it up too much. But either way, I'm really excited to watch the game with some Tiger fans, and I will be down there just as a whole for that entire series, but for the Lone Goat specifically on Friday. All right, let's jump into the heart of the show. I did tease the Yaxel Lendeborg announcement, but I'm going to start by talking about the Tigers, obviously. Tigers had another dazzling week. 5-1 week. They swept the San Francisco Giants in some closely contested, well-pitched games. They beat Kansas City 2 games out of 3. The only game that they lost this week was a game where Michael Wacha was just brilliant. Shut him down over 7 innings. Tigers had 2 hits the entire game. Besides that, they were dazzling this entire week. This is a team that knows how to win close games. It's a team that knows how to win blowouts. It's been truly inspiring, and I'm never going to tire from that because we went through enough diarrhea here as a fan base where I'm gonna sit back and enjoy my milkshake every so often. But there's just a couple things that I want to talk about because I think the sample size is relatively big at this point. We're past Memorial Day. We got about 100 games left. We're into that 60 game range where officially into the month of June. So it's that point where typically like what you are is at least a semblance or a representation of what you're going to be for the remainder of the season. There's going to be variance. Teams will get hot. Teams will get cold. Some teams will fall off. I understand it. But I think it's very fair to say this team will be playing very competitive baseball deep into the season. They're 6 games up in the American League Central. So let's talk about this. They have the best record in baseball right now. After another great week, I still contend this has not been a particularly easy schedule. Now, June seems like it lightens up a little bit, but you're talking about a team that's had to go to Milwaukee, to Houston, to Los Angeles. You've played San Francisco at home and swept them, no pushover. You've played at Minnesota. You've played Cleveland. You've played at Kansas City. I mean, you've had some legitimately tough series, and here you are with the best record in baseball. And a question was asked to me on Twitter, which I think we're at the point where this is a legitimate question now, which is this team a World Series contender? And when I read that, I couldn't help but kind of like shiver. It was like I was slapped in the face by reality because there is something fun. You want to win. Winning is always the greatest. But there is something fun about playing loose and playing with no expectations. Last year was the prime example of that. Those last 2 months were so out of nowhere, so unpredictable, 0.02% chance of making the postseason. And they ended up making the postseason and winning a postseason series. And especially by the time they got to October, by the time they were playing meaningful baseball, we were just throwing our hands up saying, hey, whatever happens next is gravy. Nobody expected this. Things have changed here. And the organization wants to have those expectations. They've earned those expectations. But now you're at a point where you are the team that's being hunted. You're not necessarily the scrappy hunter anymore. I mean, to me, they'll always be the gritty Tigers, but you get my point. And when you look at how they rank currently in Major League Baseball, and they rank up there, or in many ways ahead of the Dodgers, ahead of the Yankees, ahead of the Mets or the Phillies, you start to think to yourself, does this team belong in that category? Does this team belong in that camp? And it kind of scares me because I've been a Tiger fan for so long, but this is the ninth year that I've been doing these and feel this attachment to the franchise and this attachment to the fan base, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But in the 9 years that I've been doing this, there's never been a second, even when we were in the playoffs last year, there was never a second where I'm like, dude, we might make the World Series, we might win the World Series. And something about being asked that after their win against Kansas City on Friday just kind of struck me. And it's strange because my heart wants to tell you, hell yeah, we're a World Series contender. Of course, look at where we rank. Look at our record. Look at what we've done. Look at our pitching staff. But my head is still like kind of holding me back a little bit from really taking that step and saying, hell yeah, let's plant the flag. Let's go for it this year. Look, I've been open about this. I've been on record saying this. And we talked about this with Bailey, Foolish Baseball, a few weeks ago. The goal as an organization in the modern age of baseball is you want to try to punch your ticket to the postseason as many times as you can. You punch your ticket, you're going to have opportunities to win a championship. The Dodgers, people talk about, hey, they've been to the playoffs and they failed a million times. Yeah, they have come up short. But they are there every single year and giving themselves an opportunity to make a run. There is a randomness to the MLB postseason, similar to the randomness that is the NCAA tournament, prior to this year, right? Anything can happen. So by that metric, yes, of course the Tigers are a World Series contender. But it's so strange how I've preached the whole idea of, hey, expectations have changed. Hey, things are different. But when you start to look down the barrel of, hey, what if we match up against the Dodgers in the World Series? What if we match up against the Yankees in the ALCS? And it's led to me answering that question with a question, which is, are things really this good here? Because when you're losing, right, you stew in it and everything's terrible and you're just finding new ways to lose. It's like that when you win too. Regardless if you win 10-0 or 1-0, all of a sudden you're celebrating. All of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, hey man, what does the future look like? Who's next? When's our next pitcher? When are we going to get this guy back from injury? You start to get excited and you start stacking series wins on top of each other. Then you get really excited. This is a team that not too long ago, it was a miracle to be at 500. Now they're almost 20 games over, right? At this point, it's incredible what they've been able to do. But I look at this roster and I see guys who've taken huge steps forward, massive steps forward, who've attributed or contributed to this team a million different ways. Dingler, Green, Carp, Torque, fucking Javi, Zach McKinstry. And in my mind, and maybe my mindset and brain just needs to be rewired. It does, but I mean, just in this way here. I think to myself, hey, man, we're a really good team. But, come on, we're not. We're not the Dodgers. We're not the Mets. We're not the Phillies. We're not even the Yankees. We're not one of these big spenders. We don't have an Aaron Judge on our team. We don't have an Ohtani. We don't have a Harper. And, I do think to an extent that's true. And yet, when I watch this team right now, they don't really have an exploitable weakness. And I think that when you look at a team like the Phillies that has all these super talented players, but there's a lot that stands out. They're not a great defensive team, right? Dave Dombrowski teams aren't fundamentally sound, right? You look at the Dodgers, that pitching staff's been a little bit banged up. You look at the Yankees and you think back to the fact that, hey, we won 2 out of 3 against them earlier this season. We almost won 3 out of 3. They almost swept them. You start to have to wonder, do they belong in that camp? And maybe from my standpoint, maybe that's me trying not to get hurt again, because I think back to the heart of the Dombrowski era, and there was 1 year, I'd say 1.5 years, where I was certain this team is winning the World Series. 2013 especially, I'm like, we are not going to have a 7-game series in which we are outpitched and outhit by an opponent. And guess what? They didn't. They outpitched and outhit the Red Sox in that 2013 ALCS and still lost. But, just give up 2 grand slams. Those things are going to happen, right? That's, and not to bring up bad memories. And so maybe it's a defense mechanism to prevent me from having disappointment. But we are reaching that place in the season where you start to wonder or say to yourself, yeah, maybe they do stack up with the big boys, because every test that comes their way, they pass. A week ago, after in the heart of the Cleveland series, they'd lost 3 in a row. Skubal was pitching. That was hey, we got to salvage this series. If Cleveland wins, they're only 2 back. Now all of a sudden, Cleveland's 7 back, Minnesota's 6 back. I'm not going to call you in cruise control by any means. I mean, you got to keep playing, but you have bigger goals in front of you, and you've earned the right to have those goals in front of you, given the way that you've performed up to this point this season. And so, taking a big step back, and I know I'm doing a big lap here. The question is this a World Series caliber team? My answer, truly, is in their current form, I think that they are good enough to compete with and beat anybody in the American League. I still think, and we saw in the postseason, this happened last year with the Dodgers as well, you need a deep, powerful offense. And this is a good offense. It's an offense that's scrappy and has some really good players, some all-star caliber players. But as I said, there's not an Ohtani here. And now, look, how many teams have an Ohtani or a Freeman? But you get my point, right? I also think, as good as the bullpen has been at points, and as much as I love Will Vest, they are missing that one ingredient in the back end of the pen, which is a high-leverage, triple digits throwing, high strikeout guy. I think that those are pieces that are missing that prevent me from being like, hey, all in World Series contender we can play with and beat the Dodgers. Now, those are also two things that you can very easily acquire at the deadline without having to give up a whole lot of assets. And I think we're reaching this point now, and this is brand new territory. We talk about how last year was brand new territory. This team hasn't bought at the deadline since 2014. Okay, this is 11 years where they either stood pat or sold. This will be a team that buys. Now, to the extent in which they buy, it's not going to be Dombrowski era. They're not going to sell the farm for a David Price type, but this farm system is so deep right now that you could probably give away a few relatively key aspects and not take much of a hit. And that kind of transitions into the next point I'm going to make, but just to finalize the point I'm making here in the first part of the show, it's unbelievably fun. I'm going to keep preaching, and again, maybe this is a defense mechanism. A wall will be hit at some point. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that this is a young team, a very young team. And even some of our best players like Riley has never had, now knock on wood, this is the first year that, he can avoid this. Riley's never had a year where he hasn't gone on the IL in some capacity. Not a lot of guys in this team have played the full 162 slate in the past. Carp's had injuries, right? Torque was sent down, maybe some of the pitchers, right? But I do think that come those summer months, those dog days of summer months, I think that there will be some sort of slowing down. Now, if you want to hit a wall, you hit a wall prior to October, and then you see what happens by the time the postseason comes around. But I'm going to keep saying that. And yet, I feel like I've said that for the last 6 shows, and they just keep having winning weeks, winning series, winning months, and find themselves at the top of the standings and continuing to build their lead at the top of the AL Central. And maybe it is just because I'm such a diehard baseball guy. Maybe it is because I'm such a diehard Tiger guy. But I find this team immensely likable. I find them very, very fun to watch. I think they have fun young players. They have a likable manager. This young wonder kid, president of baseball ops. It's obviously a great fan base. I think that this is a team, and you've already seen it with some people, content creators kind of latching on. This is the team that's going to become a lot of people's B team. I think part of that is we have the best pitcher in the world, and people just love Tarek. I mean, Tarek has become like his own brand, which is so cool to see, right? And he's our guy. Right, but I think that as a whole, this is a unique situation, almost comparable to the Lions. Quite frankly, we're people all of a sudden, it's weird how many people not from Michigan came out of the woodwork being like, man, I love Dan Campbell. I love that team. It's a fun team. I think there's something similar here. Not as much firepower as the Lions, because the Lions rosters, credit to Brad Holmes, were loaded over the last few years. I don't know if I can necessarily say that about the Tigers, but one thing that is unbelievable about where the Tigers are at, and I've said it a million times, the casual fan, it's results-oriented. What's the team's record? What are they doing at the major league level? That's all I care about. And they have currently the best record in baseball. So, woohoo, way to go, right? We're in for a great summer. I can't stress to you enough how deep, how talented, and how good this farm system is right now. It is the best of my lifetime by a wide margin. And I know that we had that time where, in the Avila era with the pitchers and Torkelson and Green. Now, this is different. This is way different because these guys are not only highly sought after prospects, they're guys who are performing. And in the case of Jose Persueño, or I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've heard his name a million times. I don't know why I wouldn't be able to pronounce it. Or some of these other pieces. I mean, Colt Keith's at the major league level. These aren't just first round guys. These are later picks. I mean, Tarek obviously is the prime example. He was a 9th round pick that's turned into a Cy Young winner. There's depth everywhere. And the guy that I want to focus in on now, Briseño had an unbelievable week. He had the monster grand slam. He had a 3 home run game. I tweeted this out about 2 months ago, maybe a little bit less, right before he got injured, sadly, but now he's back. I've seen a lot of position player prospects. Well, a lot of alliteration there. Position player prospects come through this organization in my lifetime. And I would say in the last decade, we've hyped up quite a few of them. Torkelson, Green, even Colt to a certain extent was a top 100 prospect. I think even Jace was a top 100 prospect. I don't know if this organization has seen a bat quite like Kevin McGonigal's in a long time. What happens at shortstop, and I actually do think he'll stick at shortstop for a while, but whether it's shortstop, third base, second base, what have you, this guy has, I think, the potential to be a top 5-10 prospect in this entire sport by the midpoint of this season. I mean, the guy just can't stop raking. He gets on base. He is offensively the quintessential player that Scott Harris is going to want. And I don't want to get people too excited, right? We're not going to see him this year. He's in high A. But it's fun to see these guys performing because the alternative wasn't, and I'm sure we all remember this. Remember the 1 year Torque had in the minors where at each level he sucked for like 30 at-bats, then got hot, then sucked for 30 at-bats, then got hot. And then he got to the major leagues and he sucked for 3 years, then got hot. Like this is so different. And I really wish I would love to interview Scott Harris one day, honestly. Harris, Bubby, if you want to come on Chris and Company, you're welcome. And just see how many changes have been made to make sure that these players are having their full potential realized. I remember Harris's first day, his introductory press conference, where he said a lot of different things, but one of the big things he said was, we're going to develop and retain good young players. And at one point, I can't remember who it was, somebody asked him about the Tigers system. And he goes, look, I don't, and what he thought of it. He goes, I haven't worked here. This is my first day here. So I got to look under the hood. I got to see what I have. All I can tell you is what the people around me think of the Tigers farm system. And then he just stopped, which I think was his very, I would argue, not so subtle way of saying they don't have a fucking clue how to develop players. And I think that's been the case because you look at the minor league level and you look at the major league level. Guys, I'll be real. I'd forgotten about Dylan Dinkler, right? The guy's playing at like an all-star caliber level as a catcher this year, you've seen Torque turn it around. You've seen Hobby contribute. And I think that is the biggest thing that not only excites me about where they're at in the minor league level, but where they're at the major league level. And I've talked about this a million times, which is there's this misconception out there that organizations often get in their head that player development is a thing that ends when you get to the big leagues. It's not. Player development is a continuous thing. Right? And we've seen certain teams, I think the Baltimore Orioles are a prime example of this, that had this really good young core and they came on and they were very hot. Well, the league adjusted to them. And what you need at that point is a really good coaching staff and a really good front office that knows how to make sure that those guys can adjust to life at the big league level. And we've seen like Adley Rutschman's been trending downward. Some of these guys in that organization have been trending downward. I always use the Chicago White Sox as an example. After 2021, we thought they were going to run the Central for 5-6 years. 3 years later, they had the worst team ever. So it's until this year's Rockies are probably going to top it, but you get my point. I think that seeing the way that guys have developed at the big league level and fixed things and turned things around makes me really excited that guys aren't going to hit a wall and stay there. There's been this concern in the past. It was a legitimate concern that if a guy struggled, man, there was a chance they might never find it. I have so much faith in the powers and the people at the head of this organization that they can get the most out of guys. And when those struggles inevitably come, I mean, we had Riley Green who had a 1 for 30 something stretch at one point this year. They're going to be able to figure it out. I don't want to come on here every single week and keep doing victory laps. When the struggles come, I'll come on here and I'll criticize. But the process, something AJ talks about all the time, the process has to be there. And I thought in AJ's first few years here, it was always disappointing because I'm like, man, I think that this guy really knows what he's doing as a manager. I think he has the it factor to be a good manager and has been going back to his time in Houston. I also think he's given a roster that isn't much of anything. And if he could just be given a few of the right pieces, he could steer this thing in the right direction relatively quickly. and you bring in the right pieces. And Harris has done wonderful things, and these guys have done wonderful things, and they find themselves in a great place right now. It warms the cockles of my heart to be able to come on here and do nothing but praise the Detroit Tigers, but it's a lot of fun. I want to talk about a few injury-related things. It seems as though Parker Meadows is on the verge of coming back, and man, talk about adding another weapon. That's going to do wonders for this team, and I think it's going to do wonders for two players specifically. One, Parker Meadows. It's great to see him back. We forget how important he was last year in the home stretch, how important he was defensively, how important he was in the postseason. One of my favorite players on this team to watch when he's on, just because he has that five-tool potential, honestly. And against righties, he's your leadoff guy. And so he'll be helped out just having him back. The other guy that's going to help is Kerry Carpenter. I like Kerry. We all like Kerry. He's had some great moments here. He's not a leadoff hitter. He's a middle of the order guy. He's a guy who wants to step to the plate when there's guys on first and second. I have no problem with that. I think AJ has put him in that position. I understand why, with the injuries. He is a power guy. We've seen him start a few games with homers. He hasn't been awful, but he has been slumping a little bit lately. You move him to the heart of the order. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking about some good players that are going to be struggling to see the field because there's just so much depth here. And that is, I'm sorry, and people can say, oh, what are you going to do with the roster? That is a good problem to have, because there was a time not that long ago we had 0 good players. So if the alternative is there's too many cars in the garage, too many Ferraris in the garage, that's a good thing. We had a few injury-related things on the sad side. Jackson Jobe put on the 15-day IL, flexor strain. I always get this wrong. Strain in his flexor tendon. That's right. Okay. I don't want to speak things into existence, okay? And I already made a video about this. I have an idea how this ends for Jobe, and I don't want to go as far as to use the word tragic. I'll just say my concern is that it's something long-term. And let's say that it is. I'll play Debbie Downer here and say that it is a long-term thing. Does it change how I feel about Jobe's future? Do I still think he'll be a wonderful pitcher? Absolutely. Zero concern. I have concern in the present. You don't want him to be out for a long time. But he was struggling commanding the ball a little bit. You could tell that physically he wasn't super right. He was even kind of open about it. I hate that this is part of the game when it comes to pitchers now, but this is part of the game when it comes to pitchers now. And if there's any good that comes from it, it's the fact that you have an organization that is aware of how important pitching depth is, that you can lose a guy like this for who knows how long. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say whether it's long-term, short-term, what have you, but that a guy that can be out for a period of time, which that is true, he will be, and you can replace him with a very capable pitcher like a Cater Montero, or, and this is the other guy I want to talk about, Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb was kind of a surprising signing for the Tigers. 37-year-old was actually considering retirement, agreed to sign a one-year deal with Detroit for worth $15 million. Has been out with, I believe, a hip injury for the first 2 months of the season. Rehabbing, made a start in West Michigan, pitched 2 scoreless innings, but physically did not feel great. They said that he was laboring a little bit, still rehabbing from that injury. I just have a question for Tiger fans, because I find this kind of funny more than anything. Look, he's making $15 million. I'm not going to pity the guy. Why do Tiger fans hate Alex Cobb so much? They get really upset when they see Alex Cobb news. I don't really get this. Like, okay, if you think the signing was lame, okay, that's fine. I have a hard time calling any signing lame when he hasn't pitched yet. And like, best ability is availability. Maybe I'm proving the opposite side's point by saying this, but it's like I would much rather have an Alex Cobb somewhere in the system that, even if he gives them 10 starts this year, there's going to be pitching injuries. He's going to need to fill in. Money at that level is almost irrelevant to me. It's not a multi-year contract. It'll be up, like, even fucking Maeda was a multi-year contract. This was not that. Anytime there's news that breaks about this guy, like the reaction on Tiger's social media is very negative. They're very annoyed that he is a part of this. And I guess maybe to an extent, some of the reason is the fact that They have so many good young guys, and it's exciting to watch those young guys. It's exciting to watch them go to work. Even Tarek, I mean, he's 28 at this point, but we still view him as like one of our own. I think there's something kind of old hat, literally and figuratively, about the potential of tossing an Alex Cobb out there when you have Cater, who's very capable, or Sawyer Gibson-Long, who I think is about to get called up here, or Dylan Smith, who was just called up to replace Joe. But I'm telling you, and maybe I'm just losing my mind. I think that there will be a moment this season in which Alex Cobb will be important to the Detroit Tigers. I'm not saying he's going to go out and pitch 7 scoreless in a playoff game, right? Maybe it's out of the pen. Maybe it's in that long relief role, but I'm never going to turn down the possibility of having a well-established veteran presence in your clubhouse deep into a season when you're, making a run into and hopefully through the postseason. Look, if he doesn't play, then it sucks. Okay, if he never pitches at all, then okay, yeah, it's a dud. But he's almost like the new Maeda, where people have found reasons to bash him. Like, I don't know, he's trying to come back. He wants to be here. It's not some, he hasn't said any of the wrong things. So I'm rooting for Alex Cobb. I'm rooting for all these guys. Okay, last thing here, and this is what I led off the show with, or at least what the title of the show was. Yaxel Lendeborg, UAB transfer, 6'9", number 1 ranked transfer portal player in the country, coming out of UAB. That's University of Alabama, Birmingham. Do you guys remember like a decade or so ago when they canceled their football program? They brought it back a few years later, but that was a big thing, like 2014. It's bizarre. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. He has officially committed to Michigan. Now, he announced his intention to transfer to Michigan, but said he was going to test the NBA waters, and that's exactly what he did. I didn't follow this stuff super closely. I think what he wanted was to be a guy that could comfortably be in the top 20. Didn't seem like that was guaranteed. Maybe late first round, maybe early second. Made the decision, and I'm not just saying this as a fan, but I think the right decision to come to Michigan and play for Dusty May. And now the expectations are sky high. Michigan, and we're so far away, and I don't want to make any predictions at this point, but I believe Michigan will be ranked quite high in the preseason next year. The expectations are going to be pretty astronomical for Dusty May's crew. He has done a wonderful job and with his roster construction. It's a bizarre thing because in my lifetime, it's just something I need to adjust to. When I think of the teams that I really was excited about, for Michigan basketball, they were all teams that had players that I was familiar with. Like, oh man, this guy's been here for 2 or 3 years. He's only going to get better. LJ Kaysen's back, and Roddy's back, and Will Cheddar's back, so and Namari. So there are some pieces, but there's also a lot of guys, whether it's Johnson or Kadu from North Carolina or Yaxel. These are some of your key pieces are guys that like I haven't seen. They haven't played at Michigan until this upcoming year. So it is kind of a weird thing to have these expectations with a lot of guys who are just now donning maize and blue for the first time. Look, it's a big move. Basically, everyone at this point has Michigan. Most things I've seen have them ranked second in the Big Ten behind Purdue, which is sure fair. I mean, it's June 1st. I'm not gonna kibitz about preseason rankings at this point. I'm gonna make the same claim about this as I've always made, which is I'm not particularly pleased with the current world of college basketball as it pertains to the portal and NIL. I have always enjoyed and gotten attached to players that have come up through a program, and I think it's lame when these guys who gave you some really big moments, whether it's a Trey Donaldson at Michigan or a Trey Holloman at Michigan State, guys that you say to yourself, these are program guys who then the second they see greener pastures decide to transfer. I'm not blaming the player. I understand the financials, money talks in this day and age. I just personally am not a huge fan of it. At the same time, we now live in an age in college sports in which there are haves and have-nots. And Dusty May and Michigan have thrown their hat into the ring and made it very clear they are a have. Okay, they are going to spend money. They're going to be relentless in the portal. If they have to build a new roster every single year, they're going to do it because they want to do it with elite talent. And I can complain, and we all can complain and bitch and moan about the system all we want. But if you don't adapt to the system, you're going to fall apart. And I think where Michigan fans should be really excited about the future is that you have a coach that's not going to compromise here. Like, he is going to continue to adjust and change and make moves to ensure that Michigan is continually putting out the best rosters possible. And for all my complaining, I did just mention 4 guys that were all key parts of last year's team. I mean, Namari's going to be in his 3rd year here. Cheddar's 4th year here. Kaysen's 2nd. I mean, I think this team will have a wonderful mix of transfer portal add-ons and those culture guys. I do think that's very important. I always bring it up. It's like free agency in sports or in baseball, where you want to have that core, you want to have those young guys that came up together, but then you supplement that roster with, talented pieces. And I mean, we're talking about a guy he will be a 1st-round pick. Yaxel. I mean, he's going to come in here and be probably one of the projected Big Ten players of the year. He was conference offensive and defensive player of the year a year ago in Conference USA. So expectations sky high. Dusty May, in terms of his roster construction, because there are still some questions I have about in-game management. Quite frankly, there were a few duds that I felt like he had as a coach last year. But as far as culture and roster construction, I don't think I can give him anything other than an A+ in the first, whatever it is, 15 months now that he's been in Ann Arbor. I think he's done a remarkable job, and the future is exceptionally bright, as is the present in Michigan. So, all right, let's see. Let me check my notes. Anything else? No. Okay. That's my 30 minutes of rambling, but thank you guys very much. Another show in the books. We don't have a guest for Chris and Company this week. We've been so consistent, and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but for an independent show to be that consistent with the guests week in and week out, I think has been pretty legit. So if we have to take a week off, we have to take a week off. It is an exciting week this week. A lot of things going on. Like I said, Lone Goat June 6th. Come on by, say hi. If you want to watch the game with us, that'd be great. If not, I understand. But we will be there through the night for the watch party. Castellani 2014 on Twitter. Follow us on TikTok, CastellaniContent.com. Our content is getting updated every single day. We're affiliated with StubHub as well. I will make sure to add that in the description for this video. All right. Fun times, guys. Fun times. And I can feel, you can feel it, and that is something I really love about social media is we can feel the excitement for this baseball team right now. It radiates off of all of you. And honestly, with the content that Austin and I create, we build off that. We feed off of that, the way the players feed off your energy. So thank you guys very much. We will be back maybe with Chris and Company this week. If not, we'll be back next week with another recap and continue to follow all of our content. Love you guys very much. Appreciate the continual support. Have a great week, everybody. Peace and happiness.